For decades, Benny Hill stood as one of television's most recognizable comedy figures, his rapid-fire sketches and slapstick sequences becoming a staple of British and international entertainment. The Benny Hill Show mixed music hall tradition with visual comedy, cheeky innuendo, and fast-paced chase scenes that seemed almost chaotic in their energy. Audiences across generations tuned in for its irreverent humor, and for a time it appeared untouchable in its popularity. Yet beneath the laughter, cultural attitudes were beginning to shift. What once passed as harmless mischief slowly came under scrutiny as viewers and critics reassessed the boundaries of televised comedy. By the late 1980s, sketches involving suggestive humor, exaggerated female stereotypes, and objectification became increasingly controversial. The show's tone, once seen as playful, began to feel outdated to a growing segment of the audience. This tension between tradition and evolving social standards set the stage for backlash that would eventually overshadow the program's legacy. The collapse was not sudden, but rather the result of mounting criticism that reframed what had once been celebrated as comedy gold into something many considered uncomfortable and inappropriate for modern television. Early life and formative influences. Alfred Hawthorne Hill was born in Southampton, Hampshire, into a working-class family with a surprising connection to performance. His grandfather had worked as a circus clown, planting early seeds of theatrical influence that would later echo through his career. His father managed a surgical appliance shop, offering a more conventional path that contrasted sharply with the entertainment world. Hill's upbringing blended ordinary discipline with hints of showmanship, shaping a personality that would eventually gravitate toward performance. He attended Taunton School in Southampton, where he received a standard education but did not immediately display a direct route into entertainment. Before fame, Hill worked a variety of jobs, including positions at Woolworths, as a milkman, bridge operator, driver, and even drummer. These roles exposed him to different social environments and personalities, indirectly feeding into his later character-based comedy. Inspired by music hall performers and comedians like Jack Benny, he developed a fascination with timing, exaggeration, and visual humor. His decision to adopt the name Benny reflected both admiration and ambition, marking the beginning of a deliberate transformation from ordinary working man into entertainer, war service, and the birth of a performer. During World War II, Hill was conscripted into the British Army, where he trained in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. His role involved maintaining and repairing mechanical equipment, a technical responsibility that required discipline and precision. He later served as a truck driver and searchlight operator, contributing to defensive operations during a turbulent period of global conflict. One of the most significant moments in his military experience came with his deployment to Normandy in 1944, placing him within a critical phase of the Allied advance through Western Europe. Although his duties were not theatrical in nature, the structured environment of military life influenced his sense of timing and adaptability. A turning point came when he joined the Combined Services Entertainment Division, which provided performances to boost troop morale. Here, Hill encountered live audiences in highly varied conditions, learning how to adjust humor for immediate response. This experience proved foundational, allowing him to experiment with comedic delivery, pacing, and audience engagement. The combination of technical military training and live performance exposure created a unique skill set that would later define his television career, from radio beginnings to early television steps. After the war, Hill transitioned into entertainment through radio, which was then one of Britain's dominant media platforms. His debut on Variety Bandbox in 1947 introduced him to national audiences and showcased his ability to adapt comedic material for audio-only formats. Without visual support, he relied heavily on vocal timing, character voices, and verbal rhythm to create humor. This period was marked by inconsistency, as some performances resonated strongly, while others failed to gain traction. Despite mixed reception, he continued refining his approach, developing a style that combined quick wit with absurd situations. As television emerged as a growing cultural force in the early 1950s, Hill adapted once again, making his first screen appearances in 1950. The visual medium opened new creative possibilities, particularly in physical comedy and visual gags, which would later become central to his identity. Early television work allowed him to experiment with character switching and sketch-based storytelling, laying the groundwork for a format that blended theatrical performance with cinematic editing techniques. These formative years were essential in shaping his transition from radio performer to television comedian. The rise of The Benny Hill Show. The Benny Hill Show premiered in 1955 on the BBC, marking the beginning of a long-running television institution. Its format drew heavily from British music hall traditions, combining sketches, musical interludes, and comic monologues into a fast-moving variety structure. Hill's comedic approach leaned toward slapstick, parody, double entendre, and exaggerated physical performance, which quickly gained popularity with audiences. The show's early success was supported by a rotating cast of performers who helped bring sketches to life, including recurring collaborators who contributed to its distinctive style. Characters often appeared in loosely connected segments rather than continuous narratives, giving the program a flexible and unpredictable rhythm. One of its defining features was its ability to shift tone rapidly, moving from dialogue-based humor to silent physical sequences within seconds. This variety made it accessible to a wide audience and helped establish Hill as a leading comedic figure in British television. Over time, the show developed a recognizable identity built on repetition, rhythm, and visual exaggeration, setting it apart from more traditional scripted comedies of the era. Cast, characters, and expanding comedy style. As the show evolved, a strong ensemble of supporting performers became essential to its success. Actors such as Patricia Hayes, Jeremy Hawke, and Jackie Wright contributed recurring characters and reactions that enhanced Hill's comedic timing. Jackie Wright, in particular, became iconic for his role as the frequent target of slapstick physical gags, especially Hill's exaggerated head-patting routines. These interactions established a dynamic where Hill's character often acted as a mischievous instigator surrounded by exaggerated archetypes. Writers like Dave Freeman also played a significant role in shaping early material, helping structure sketches that balanced verbal humor with physical comedy. Hill's ability to shift between multiple roles within a single episode became a defining trait, allowing him to portray authority figures, everyday workers, and absurd caricatures. This flexibility reinforced the sketch-based format, where narrative continuity was less important than comedic impact. Over time, recurring characters such as Harry Hill and Fred Scuttle emerged, each embodying specific comedic traits that audiences came to recognize. The growing ensemble and expanding character range helped solidify the show's identity as a fast-moving variety experience rather than a traditional sitcom. Transition to Thames and global expansion. A major turning point occurred in 1969 when the show moved from the BBC to Thames Television. This transition marked a shift in production style, allowing for longer one-hour specials instead of shorter weekly episodes. The increased runtime enabled more elaborate sketches, complex staging, and enhanced musical segments. Production values improved significantly, with greater emphasis on choreography, editing, and visual pacing. This era also marked the beginning of the show's international expansion, as it was broadcast in over 140 countries. Its largely visual humor allowed it to transcend language barriers, making it accessible to global audiences. Hill's combination of physical comedy, parody, and exaggerated storytelling proved universally understandable, contributing to his international fame. The Thames era also refined the show's signature chase sequences, which became a hallmark of each episode. These sequences relied on rapid editing and sped-up footage to create chaotic, comedic movement through various settings. This production style became one of the most recognizable aspects of the series and helped cement its identity as a uniquely visual form of television comedy. Signature style and production techniques. The Benny Hill Show developed a distinctive comedic language built around repetition, visual exaggeration, and fast-paced editing. One of its most famous techniques was undercranking, where scenes were filmed at a slower frame rate and played back at normal speed to create a frantic, accelerated effect. This was especially effective in chase sequences, which became a recurring feature of the show's structure. These sequences often involved Hill and ensemble cast members running through changing environments, accompanied by playful music that heightened the sense of chaos. The humor relied less on dialogue and more on timing, movement, and visual contrast. Characters such as policemen, elderly women, and exaggerated archetypes frequently appeared in these sequences, contributing to the layered comedy. The show also made heavy use of parody, referencing films, celebrities, and cultural trends of the time. Hill's performance style depended on exaggerated facial expressions and physical gestures, allowing him to communicate humor instantly without explanation. This approach made the show highly exportable and contributed to its widespread international appeal, even as domestic tastes began to shift. Rising criticism and cultural shift. By the late 1970s and 1980s, cultural attitudes toward comedy began to change significantly. What had once been viewed as lighthearted and cheeky humor increasingly came under criticism for its portrayal of women and reliance on suggestive themes. The frequent use of objectification in sketches, particularly involving scantily clad women in chase sequences, became a focal point for debate. Critics argued that the humor reflected outdated social attitudes, while supporters defended it as harmless parody rooted in music hall tradition. However, television audiences were evolving, and new comedic styles were emerging that prioritized narrative depth and social awareness. As a result, The Benny Hill Show began to feel increasingly out of step with contemporary expectations. Ratings declined, and networks became more cautious about broadcasting material that could be seen as offensive. The controversy was not centered on a single moment but rather a gradual accumulation of criticism that reframed the show's identity. This shift in perception played a major role in reducing its prominence and setting the stage for its eventual cancellation. Decline and end of the series. The combination of declining viewership, changing cultural standards, and growing criticism eventually led to the show's cancellation in 1989. Although still popular in certain international markets, it no longer held the same influence in its country of origin. Production costs, changing network priorities, and concerns about content all contributed to its end. Hill himself reportedly became more withdrawn in later years, and the production scale of the show diminished. The once iconic chase sequences and ensemble sketches began to feel repetitive in a rapidly evolving entertainment landscape. New generations of comedians were experimenting with alternative forms of humor that moved away from slapstick and visual exaggeration. Despite its global legacy, the show could not sustain its earlier momentum in the face of shifting expectations. The cancellation marked the end of an era in British television comedy, closing a chapter defined by physical humor, rapid editing, and variety-style performance. Legacy of a comedy icon. Even after its cancellation, The Benny Hill Show left a lasting imprint on global entertainment. Its influence can be seen in later sketch comedy programs and in the continued use of physical humor in film and television. Hill's mastery of visual timing and nonverbal comedy ensured that his work remained recognizable long after its original broadcast era. At the same time, the controversies surrounding the show continue to shape discussions about changing comedic standards and cultural sensitivity. Hill himself remains a complex figure, celebrated for his innovation in visual comedy and criticized for elements that no longer align with modern sensibilities. The tension between these perspectives reflects broader changes in entertainment history, where humor is constantly reevaluated through new social lenses. Ultimately, the show stands as both a product of its time and a reference point for how comedy evolves. Its rise and fall illustrate how cultural context can redefine even the most popular entertainment, transforming beloved television into a subject of debate and reflection.